meeting, because I'd like the members to have a chance to think about it, and maybe the staff as well. You know, that meeting, our last board meeting, was a bit unusual in terms of some of the conversations that went on. And in listening to it, it occurs to me that because of how hard we work to build our committee structure, we have inadvertently created an organizational structure imbalance, I think. And so let me just share with you what I think that means. Darden, you may remember because you've been on here as long as I have. In the beginning, nobody wanted to serve on the committees. It was really hard to get participation. And through, Brad, your efforts and that fabulous redevelopment or reorganization of the whole agency after the failure of Greenlight, we developed that strategic plan, which we continue to use today.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we need to, I mean, we might need to go back and take a look at it to see if it needs to be updated. And I share that because on the county commission, we update our strategic plan every single year based on what's happened and what we have done or what we continue to need to do. You know, the world changes, and so do the dynamics that we can't control. But with that said, I don't feel at this moment that maybe we have communicated properly the skill sets or the, I'm searching for the right word, that are needed.
Mindset.
Or the mindset. Good. Thank you, Darden. Such a great word.
No, I have felt this way about this board for a long time.
Yeah, to serve on the different committees and the executive committee and the chair's position. And it was always it's always been my thought that you serve on the various boards that you have a personal interest in or maybe some experience, and then you learn more, right, as it relates to this agency. And after a while, you get to a place where you feel pretty comfortable in leadership. And I wanted to put a little homework assignment out to the executive committee. You'll have to talk to Patty about it because she's not here, about why are you on this committee, this executive committee. You know, you clearly have different levels that you rise up through to become the chair. But if you're on this committee, the executive committee, and you don't have a desire to be chair, why are you on it? Isn't that the whole reason that you're on it? Because you have an interest in leadership and you want to learn and you want to develop and you want to get a sense for what that means, right? Mm-hmm. It was pretty stunning to hear one of our members of this committee say in a public board meeting they had no interest in being chair.
Yeah.
And I think if that's the case, and maybe it is, that's okay too. But then you shouldn't sit and take up a seat that somebody else might want to be on and rise up through the ranks to become chair. And that's my point. Do we need to have that conversation? I think it's important for the stability of the board.
I have a question with regard to that.
Please.
And that would be, is there a specific number that is the maximum number of people that can serve on the executive board? Because if there is an open-ended size capacity available, people may be interested in learning or in participating in executive decisions, but not necessarily beyond it. That's not my case, but other people might just be interested in learning more. And if we have an open-ended capacity to have people on the executive committee, then it's not necessarily wrong for those folks to participate, but not necessarily want to go through the chairs.
That's a really good point and a very good question. And when I was first elected to the executive committee, Bill's going to remember this clearly because you could have knocked me over with a feather in our first meeting when I went there and there were only 3 people 3. There was no succession plan. There was no ability for the current chair to stay on the executive committee and provide mentoring or, answer questions or whatever, or guidance or nothing. So we changed it, right, Bill?
Well,
Yes, the answer
I'm
is
not,
yes.
of course. My recollection is that it did not meet as often as the executive committee is now meeting. It would meet on call for something.
You're right.
And we formally, I think it was when I was chair, I said, no, we need the executive committee to meet primarily to deal with board structural business, not to make policy decisions.
Well, because it's the executive committee that should be helping to set the agenda as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, definitely, yeah, the agenda, and to talk about do we need another committee, how are the committees
Right.
organized, is there balance in the committees, and then also to, as you said, to build skills as people going forward. Now, sometimes executive committees include the committee chairs so it would be the people in the leadership
Of the other committees.
and the 2 policy chairs would be a possible option.
So is that something that we want to give some thought to and have it be on our next agenda so that the other members of the board can participate or have input if they want to? Because the second point that I wanted to make, besides the leadership issue, is the points that Commissioner Eggers brought up in the nominating process. And as that conversation was going on, there were pieces of it that I really agreed with him. Because in the nominating process, the nominating committee makes recommendations, but there could be a groundswell from the rest of the board to want to overturn those recommendations and deal with somebody else. Now that, to me, is a slippery slope a bit when you have as large of a board as we have, because it could turn into a Donnybrook, And the whole reason why you try to have the nominating process is to vet first and avoid a lot of the craziness that can go on. Bill, did you have a point?
And we did have that a long time ago. John Bryan?
That was a little before my time.
Yeah, but was it John?
He was a former city council member, yeah.
And he volunteered to be on the nominating committee, and so the nominating committee went off, and they brought back him as the chair. And the board went through a kind of a crisis moment and said, no, wait a minute, we're not sure that we want to do that. So that's looking at an organizational structure on the appointing the members of the nominating committee. Perhaps they should be people who have been on the board but are not interested in advancement, or I really don't think they should be the ones that are nominating themselves for
That is a little self-serving.
and so that was one of the things I was going to talk to Brad about in my one-on-one with him, that I think would make things a little easier. I mean, there's some people on the board that have been here, but they just don't want a leadership position, but they've been around that know people that would be excellent.
The other piece, though, to that as a counter, just for you to think
Yeah.
about, if you're on the board because your other board put you there and you don't really have an interest in it and you don't really like it that much and you're just showing up because you have a responsibility to do so, I'm not sure I want that person making recommendations for leadership. And you know, sometimes if it's a newer person, they don't know enough to, I mean, I say
Right.
that lovingly, but they don't know the big picture to be able to make a decision that's good for the whole agency. Am I
Well,
making any
No,
sense?
you're making
Perhaps the past chair could be the chair of the nominating committee.
I'm
Yeah.
just throwing these things out for discussion. I don't know all the answers. I just think it's worth a discussion for us to be sensitive to some of the critiques that come up. And the other thing I want to share, and I'm assuming you're going to do the report of the executive committee at the next board meeting. Okay, notes.
Okay.
You know, I learned a lot, when I got into the legislature, there were two things that was shared with me by a very prominent lobbyist who cared about my being somewhat successful. And they were the following. You may not, somebody that you're working with on a committee may be totally against you today. But on an issue that you care deeply about, 2 months from now, you may really need that person to be with you. So if you don't live to fight another day, then you can't get anything done. And I never forgot that, because for the most part, it has kept me from really unleashing my snarky tongue when I felt like it, because nobody likes to be challenged personally, and it's not fun to be talked about in an open meeting. But if you take your personal feelings, and we all have them, and then you use it as an excuse to walk up to another board member and really light into them, that's not going to be good for you, because people never forget how you make them feel.
That's true.
Words of wisdom from JCL today.
I feel like I missed a heck of a board meeting.
Yeah.
And it was a little
You did.
feisty at point, and, you know, at times, but I think it was healthy till the end.
The only thing I would say is, with regard to that, and Bill raises a good point with regard to sort of, I don't want to say padding, but making the the nominating committee sort of filling it with people that might, in fact, be looking to have an insurrection of some kind. That's unlikely to happen, because we have a fairly large commission that's going to have cooler heads will prevail. But the other issue, the other issue is because of the fact that we can't really talk to each other outside of the meetings due to sunshine rules. The only place you're going to talk to people on committees is here, and so therefore, you know, those issues that might be, you know, you might be against each other on one and with each other on another, are still going to play out in terms of the big picture of the 15-member board. So it's hard to do anything that would really influence one party or another party on a given issue.
Good points, all of them good points. So back to my original question, do you feel that this is a worthy discussion to have at a regularly agended executive committee meeting, where we could perhaps invite the chairs of the other committees to participate? I think that was your recommendation, wasn't it, Bill?
My recommendation was, if you're going to reconstruct the executive committee, that it should be the officers and a committee and one or both of the policy chairs, and not another committee member, not another board member that isn't sort of risen up.
Right, but there, I do have a sensitivity to how big the executive committee could get if we just start carte blanche, you know.
Well, and then we have trouble with the quorum.
And
right.
I don't think, you know, if they don't want to participate,
Right.
they can have that option too, but at least we could let them know, we're gonna be discussing board structure and organization. If you'd like to have input in that, would that be?
Just to clarify, at the executive committee?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be fine.
Chairwoman,
No, go ahead.
there was something that you said earlier when you started this conversation, and I believe it was a comment that there's one way of looking at this committee, that this is, there's a framework here for people who want to eventually become chair.
Right.
And I'm hearing Commissioner Johnson should suggest a different sort of teamwork approach for this committee that would be, the chairs of all of our committees, which I like. I'm not sure I necessarily think that the people on this committee necessarily have to be groomed for chair, but I do think they need to have a sense of their leadership role in supporting executive decisions.
Okay.
Which would, go in line with, more of a teamwork approach.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, because,
Expand on that?
we
I'm not sure I
remember,
follow you.
Okay, I don't think sitting on this committee is, I think for someone who may desire or be willing to accept the nomination to at some point chair the board, participation in this environment, in this committee, yes, is necessary.
Mhm.
But you can also be on this committee if you don't necessarily desire to be the chair.
Okay.
but I guess my question, Darren, is why would you want to be on this particular committee if you didn't have a desire for leadership?
Oh, well, I mean, I think there's lots of ways to be a leader on PSTA without necessarily having to be the chair. I think that someone who has served on the board for a long time, who has served maybe as a chair of a committee, who is supporting executive functions, who, sees things from a wider perspective, not just representing their own city or their own small issue, but seeing things from a higher level and supporting executive decisions. I hope that makes sense.
Well, yes, but it defines the chair. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't figure out why anybody would want to go through all of that and then not be chair. To me, they just go together. But I guess my question is, so we can move to the rest of the real agenda. Do you think it's worth a subject matter on an agenda if we need to change the structure, or maybe we don't need to change the structure? Just try to be responsive to the last meeting.
Yeah. Well, maybe if I could just, in my humble 2 cents, and just to bring Darden up to speed on what happened, and all of you up, what has happened subsequently to the meeting. There was the nominating committee made recommendations for appointing several slots vacated by Commissioner Johnson's departure from PSTA.
That's what you get for leaving, Bill.
As most of you know, there was a Commissioner Patty Johnson was not supportive of, had put her own name in to be the MPO, the Ford Pinellas representative from PSTA, as did Commissioner Long, and the nominating committee had voted to nominate Commissioner Long, and then the PSTA board at the meeting, after some discussion and a back and forth with Commissioner Patty Johnson, voted in support of the nominating committee's recommendations. There was comments by a number of members. Commissioner Eggers' comments were based on he wanted to nominate Brian Scott, Commissioner Scott, to the position, and the way, at least Alan Zimmett described that this has always been the way PSTA has handled nominations, was that the nominating committee would recommend a slate of recommendations, and there would be a vote by the board up or down, and if it failed, then another board member could nominate somebody else. There's another way that Commissioner Eggers pointed out that people do it, where you just have open nominations from the floor. But Alan Zimmett described, well, we have this nominating committee process and we do it by the vote. And if the vote fails, then another nomination is suggested. It can be either way, and we can discuss whether we want to, I think as you say, make it wide open, and that can create some problems. Maybe there's no need to have, if you have it wide open, Hart had so many problems, they got rid of their nominating committee. They just have a wide open Hunger Games situation go on, you know, at their board meetings. Now, let me just finish. Subsequent to the meeting, I have watched the videotape now 3 times, and I cannot see it, but Patty Johnson got upset with a comment that Commissioner David Banther from Tarpon Springs made. And right after the meeting ended, she went over to him and yelled at him about his comment. And I don't think he even knew what she was talking about, so he didn't really say anything. And then I know he contacted Chair Long, and he contacted me, told me. Patty then called me and on Thursday and said she had quit PSTA over this comment. She had resigned.
From the board?
From the entire board.
Well,
And she told Clarissa the same thing. And I said, well, that's pretty stark. At the time, I had not talked to Commissioner Banther. I had watched. I didn't even know anything had happened. And then I said, well, maybe could you sleep on it and just hold off, you know, and come to the executive committee today, Monday, you know, and maybe call, just take your time, because you are serving on the executive committee in a leadership role. And she said she would, but I texted her and tried to call her this morning, and she's not here. So I don't know what her current status is on PSTA. She might have quit. I've spoken to Mr. Banther, and he's totally fine, and so it might be topical to have a discussion about the executive committee makeup, because we might have lost a member.
Well,
I don't know.
to that point, if I
okay.
mean,
Sure,
we can certainly, but if that's her wish, we can certainly fill that spot with one of the folks that really want it.
Yeah.
Because we can't have an even member, right? I mean,
Well, Commissioner Gerard is also on the executive committee. She just couldn't
Right.
come today.
oh, that's right, she's still out, yeah. Oh, my God. That's, you know, let Joe go first, please, because he was trying to say something.
I would have 2 comments. First of all, I don't remember what David Banther said, so whatever he said wasn't like inflammatory or anything like that. But I don't remember, except that he said I'm not real familiar with the process because I'm a newbie. But other than that, I don't remember exactly what he said. But 2 quick things. Number 1, with regard to nominating David Scott. Brian Scott, excuse me, Brian Scott. The issue there is if Brian wanted to make a nomination of Commissioner Eggers or vice versa, Commissioner Eggers to make a nomination for Brian Scott, the time to do that would have been to appear at the nominating committee meeting and make a formal presentation at that time. And that would have, then he could have been more thoroughly evaluated. I mean, I also was had volunteered to be on that same committee. But we decided that based on a really long discussion about experience and in fact, clout from other positions and so on, that we would have the most bang for our buck in terms of being represented on that committee. And that's why we selected Chair Long for that. But with regard to quitting the board over a personal issue like that, I feel badly about that. I was not aware of that.
Well, the point though, Joe, is I clearly remember what David said, and he didn't say it in any kind of a personal nefarious way.
Mhm.
She took it that way, and that is an issue for her, but she didn't give him a chance to clarify or say, I'm sorry, or anything. Her comments to him were very inappropriate, in my opinion. Commissioner Rice.
I was just gonna say that, until there's a one-on-one between Brad and Commissioner Johnson, I just feel like, I'm not sure if we have enough information to go on to really make any decisions here today.
Mhm.
That
Right.
I agree with
we can
that.
sleep on
I agree
this.
with that, I agree with
Yeah.
that too. I wasn't indicating that I thought we
Yeah.
should do anything today.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, you know,
Yeah, no,
Things
I
might have
agree.
simmered down, we just don't know.
I mean, and technically, even in the case of Commissioner Johnson, the rules and regulations and the state legislation that created PSTA says you are a PSTA board member until replaced. So, I don't know if she can quit, you know, until.
Indentured servitude.
but isn't she appointed by her city to
Yes.
sit here?
Yes.
Right, and until Pinellas
So
Park
she-
votes somebody else besides her,
Mhm.
she is the PSTA representative of Pinellas Park.
Right,
I mean, she's the representative of Pinellas Park on the PSTA board.
and they're going through an election, so there's nothing going to happen for at least 1 month. maybe
Well,
more.
she's not on the ballot,
No,
is
but,
she?
but there are people on the commission who are going to be up for election, including the mayor.
Yeah, and she's.
So therefore, they're going to have
Yeah.
some replacements potentially or other turnover that's going to create some other voting issues because the person that's coming on may not be knowledgeable enough to really make a decision about who to go on, et cetera.
Well, has she put anything in writing to you?
No.
Well, I think you need to call her again.
Go to the
Only-
Pinellas Park City
again-
Hall and.
Again, you're the
stop her.
only one that can do that because of rules. We can't really talk. That's not appropriate for us to talk one-on-one with somebody like that. So.
Yeah.
Okay,
Madam Chair?
yes, Bill.
There were two points that I just want to share. One is, before talking about it, this kind of a discussion, or the executive committee membership and structure, talking about that at a board meeting, I think it would be wise to have Brad set that discussion up in one-on-ones with the other board members.
Of course, that's
Yeah.
why we're talking
Okay.
here now.
Well, I just wanted to, I thought maybe that wasn't going to happen. The other thing, going back to the nominating committee process, there's kind of a third process, rather than having a nominating committee or just an open nominations, which is the nominating committee is charged with coming up with at least one nomination for every position, so that you've got somebody lined up. But to change the election process such that you say, are there any other nominations? And then have a discussion at the board of the members, and then have a board vote on which nomination, which nominated person. And it would feel a little more participatory for the rest of the board than to just have the nominating committee make the motion and then not be able to have a discussion about an alternative. It's a little different process.
Thank you for that, Bill. I have a question, Brad. The committee meetings, when we get notice of a committee meeting, is it just the members of the committee that get the notice, Rachel?
No, I
published.
always,
You send it to everyone?
Yeah.
So everyone has an opportunity to come.
oh, yeah.
And they know when we're meeting. So, I mean, if they're
Yeah.
really that interested, seems to me they have a little bit of responsibility too. Anyway, you'll talk about this with the board on your one-on-ones with them?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
And then figure out from that if there's a desire to have a discussion. Does that mean you're included? All right, can I have a motion, please, on the, approving the minutes of February
motion.
5th? Moved by Commissioner Barkley,
Aye.
seconded by Commissioner Rice. Everyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Madam Chair, would you like to just acknowledge for the record that there's nobody from the public?
I did that
She
at the
did.
very
She did.
beginning.
Oh, you did, okay.
I did,
okay.
yes, we have public
Thank
comment,
you.
Brad, you must have been on a
Sleep.
different place.
Yeah, sorry.
Information items, Brad?
Oh, yes. The item I wanted to talk to you about, two items, the board agenda and then a draft letter that I prepared. Let me put the draft letter first. And maybe if you want to support or not support me sending this, let me know. I talked, Mr. Rick Homans, the the CEO of the Tampa Bay Partnership, called me and suggested sending this letter that to the Florida DOT and the Executive Director of HART, offering PSTA's assistance in advancing and helping with the premium transit plan, since our board voted unanimously to endorse it, to go to public input, public outreach, and the HART board did not. And but he encouraged me to be as diplomatic as possible and as understanding as possible. So I've tried to do that,
Great letter.
to allow HART to maybe take a different position or clarify their position. I know that, and you can describe exactly what happened, but I guess there was a
Sorry.
request at the T-BARTA meeting of the HART, of Jeff, to reconsider their vote, or?
Well, we were stunned to learn of their lack of support. And he was at the meeting. Were you there? can't
I was not
remember.
there.
Okay.
I heard about it.
He was
but-
at the meeting. He stood up and he felt that it was potentially a misunderstanding. And then many of us also recognize that with the absence of Catherine Egan, it has left a big void over there, and they are really, working overtime to try to catch up on all of the initiatives that
Yeah.
she had been moving forward with, and this is clearly one of the most important ones. And so I see an opportunity here, just like we've worked for the last couple of years, to strengthen our relationship with HART and make it a more seamless system. I mean, I just think it's a commendable thing for us to do, given that it's not gonna drive the staff crazy. Bill?
Yeah.
I was at that T-BARTA meeting, and I believe I recall Secretary Gwynn as saying that he hoped that the HART board would reconsider their decision to sit it out.
I talked to him afterwards about, was there anything that we could do? So,
Just for clarification, what specifically were their concerns that they decided not to participate?
oh, thank you for asking that question. If you've been at any of those meetings, you know that Commissioner Kemp is she is totally opposed to the plan, and she makes no bones about it and never stops talking about it, and reiterates and reiterates and reiterates the same exact thing. She wants a railroad.
Mhm.
She wants the CSX line, and that's all she can focus on,
Okay.
to the extent of all the other good stuff. But the big important thing here that people miss I even got mad at Tim Nickens this morning, because this article missed it too.
Mhm.
This is the first time ever that FDOT is willing to use road dollars to help with transit.
Mhm.
And they are picking up the biggest portion of the dollars.
Yeah.
Where's Cassandra? Right, Cassandra?
Yes.
So, you know, what a gift horse for us in terms of making this really possible. And not to mention, oh my God, I forgot to share with you in case you all don't know. Saturday night, we got the $1 million in the House version during conference. You probably already, you let everybody know, right?
Well, yeah, just before you got here.
Yeah.
But just to clarify, the reason I think, you know, that Jeff Seward, the HART CEO, is trying to describe that there's a misunderstanding is Commissioner Kemp, as Janet's describing, is completely opposed to the plan's recommendations. And there's a couple other HART board members that are also not in favor of the recommendations. However, the HART board, not all of the board members seem to react to that, were opposed to it. But Jeff, the executive director, said at the meeting, well, that with Catherine's departure and some staff turnover, he just didn't know if they had the staff resources to help the consultant with the outreach. And he went on to say he also felt it would not be in the spirit of Commissioner Kemp and others' concerns about the plans to have HART staff helping with the outreach, because that would make them look biased. That comes across as if they might be endorsing the plan.
Even though they're Jacob's client with the study?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
this-
so then I would say that the vote was by the HART board was not really clarified. It was not completely against the plan. It was really just to direct staff not to help Jacobs, the consultant,
But-
with the public outreach.
But weren't some of the, excuse me, Madam Chair, weren't some of the HART board members opposed to the plan because they wanted the full rail down the middle of the interstate?
Yeah,
Instead
well-
of the CSX?
Well, yes,
Yes.
that's the whole point
I mean,
we're
there-
trying to make.
But there were, I
But
think
they
Pat
did
Kemp
say
was
at the
on-
meeting, they
was
said at the
opposed
meeting it
for
would
one
keep
reason,
going.
And other people are opposed for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And their
Yeah, it's kind of
strong,
an unruly alliance then.
their
really.
strongest board member was not there that day, Catherine Shanahan.
She was.
She was not at the HART board, meaning the day that they voted not to
Chairman
suspend.
Miller
Oh, not at
didn't
the,
vote.
not at the HART, not at the HART board.
He did, why?
Well, I don't know, Chairman Miller was in support, but for some reason didn't vote. And
I mean, I've watched that videotape too. I've watched a lot of YouTube of transit meetings, and I couldn't tell how he voted. The news articles I've read said that he voted in opposition of the plan of
Okay.
participation, but I
Is-
didn't see him take a vote.
Is there a record, public record of the vote?
I haven't looked at them.
Because I mean, Pat Kemp, I mean, basically by doing that, it looks like she's lining up with the
But-
people who are opposed to the plan in general. You know,
It
and so
was,
that's kind of an
it was
unusual
communicated that
scenario.
Jacobs Engineering's contract that FDOT is providing the funding for will continue regardless.
Mhm.
Because she asked the question at the HART meeting, she said, well, will this kill the whole thing? Can we stop this bus plan from moving forward, which was her desire?
Mhm.
And FDOT, I think, and Jacob said, no, you can't. We're gonna go forward. The only thing you can really vote on is directing staff not to help out.
But
Okay.
the other thing that he was really clear on, Secretary Quinn, is he would, because she was just, it got to the point of being outrageous in terms of how she was trying to hijack the meeting. And he finally said, look, we'll work on the CSX line. We're not opposed to working on the CSX line. In order for us to do that, the 3 county MPOs have to regionalize and be speaking with one voice and one message, and they have to tell us that it's their priority. And that'll happen when pigs sprout wings and learn how to fly.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, I'm gonna share this letter with, Rick, once more, and
get it out before they
And get-
change their mind.
and
or we
definitely try to
lose
get
the
it out this week
opportunity.
before the TMA meets on, Friday. Yeah.
Does that meet with the approval of the executive
Yes.
committee? Jordan?
Yes.
Do you
And
want
we'll just see what they
say
do.
yes or no?
Well, it's on here as an actual motion.
Joe moved, Darden,
Joe and Darden, okay.
Yep.
Everyone's,
and we all voted yes.
okay.
Okay, what
Okay.
else now?
The
agenda?
board agenda, the meeting is, a week earlier. Thank you. It's on the 21st. We go up earlier than it would normally be. Of course, we're gonna recognize our outgoing board member, who is a very outgoing person, and, also.
Well, I was always-
Dedicated,
Dedicated.
dedicated, tenacious.
Yeah, and a great trainer too. I mean, I really have learned a lot from you, Bill. Thank you.
And we may, at your suggestion, represent, see if we can get a, driver.
From the Jolly Trolley. I wanted to share with you, Saturday night, Rick and I and another couple drove our cars to the city hall in Clearwater, and we took the trolley ride out to Clearwater Beach. It was hilarious. We had the most fun, and it was a great experience watching the driver. Because I am telling you, that woman had the patience of a saint. The people, and there were so many tourists that were trying to get on, and they got so confused, and they'd get on, they'd go all the way and sit down, and then all of a sudden they'd think, I'm not sure I'm on the right bus. They'd go up and they'd ask her, and she'd say, no, you need to get off right now and wait for the one that goes to downtown St. Pete, where they were trying to get downtown St. Pete, or Tarpon Springs, or whatever. And then, so we went out there, we had dinner out there, and then we walked to the stop and took it back, and lo and behold, it's the same driver. What's the chances of that? And then she got
Excellent.
caught up with a bunch of people tooting their horns at her and trying to get the trolley out of the way, and she was just adorable. I'm telling you, she made it fun just watching her. So I said to Brad, wouldn't it be fun just for kicks to bring her to one of our board meetings? You never know who's gonna get on your bus. Right? I mean,
I think that'd be terrific.
that's a tough job. The traffic was like moving at a snail's pace, almost deadlocked at one point. Beautiful sunset. Got to watch it all the way over the bridge, because I didn't have to pay attention.
I was out there myself with a lot of our staff at the Transit Town Hall that we had at Clearwater Beach on Friday afternoon, and it was, like you say, tons of tourists getting off the trolleys, getting on and off the trolleys, and workers too, and lots of questions. You know, people that maybe they'd been to Clearwater Beach, but they just weren't sure, you know, where to catch it, or which one to ride, or where's the beach, or, you know, lots of different questions.
So do you have a shortage of drivers? Because we pulled up behind another one at one point, right there at the Marina Cantina. She said, oh my Lord, I can't believe he's still out here. He's been out here since about 5:36 this morning.
Oh, really?
I don't know how he could still see
Maybe,
them.
I don't know, I'll ask the Jelly Trolley.
They do split shifts like we do.
Not as many, not so much. I'll find out from the Jelly Trolley.
All right.
And then the item that I would like Cassandra to talk a little bit about is this presentation she's gonna make that's framed around an action item related to our incremental regional transit improvements. That is, I think, quite topical because it is essentially an incremental approach to what ultimately will be the premium transit plan.
Hello.
Hello.
So down in the planning department, we're not completely oblivious to what the regional transit plan has been saying for the last, 40 years? And the regional connections that we need to make. So we have made a plan a long time ago to look at our 100X, which is a regional route that we currently run from Gateway Mall to downtown Tampa over the Gandy Bridge. And we have been working with FDOT on some capital improvements, as well as looking at what kind of operational improvements that we can make. So we know that the vision is really that regional transit feasibility plan, but that it's going to take local funding in bits and pieces along with partnerships with the department to sort of get all those pieces aligned so we can get the service that we're really looking for. So as part of the item, our first phase of this expansion would be to take all of the trips that we currently make, I think is about 11 trips, 10 trips a day that we make to downtown Tampa from Gateway Mall, and extend them along 275 to downtown St. Petersburg. So we would then have the start of a downtown to downtown connection. That first phase is being funded by the Department of Transportation Urban Corridor funding. And so that's money that we rescued from another service, actually the East Lake Connectors. If you remember a couple years ago, we eliminated that route because of poor performance. We've now recaptured that funding and put it onto this extension. In order to make that more efficient, we would like to work towards that regional transit feasibility plan, building in capital improvements along 275 to start with shoulder running buses, and as the Gateway Intermodal Center comes online, shifting from Gateway Mall to Gateway Intermodal Center, and then as the Howard Franklin express lanes come online, shifting the service from Gandy to the Howard Franklin. I think that will actually be the hardest part as we start to expand this. But 10 trips a day isn't nearly enough, nor is it what we would consider a service that people would find as reliable or frequent as they would like it to be. And so the other operational side of this long-term vision and how we sort of piece it together is to consider a service development grant to expand the service to be about 5 or 6 in the morning to 11 or 12 at night, and then also run to the airport. So
That last piece is really important.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
I think that's critical.
It is. That's what I was going to ask also, isn't it important that we get people getting off a plane onto a bus or whatever, ultimately train or whatever, ultimately get them to the beach, whether it's Clearwater Beach or St. Pete Beach. We got to get those people so they're not stopping at the rental counter, picking up a car that's going to further congest the traffic flow.
So there are some things that we can do right now and start to incrementally build towards that. It's when those express lanes are built on the Howard Franklin Bridge, and I have a call in FDOT to just double check what year that would be open. But that would be the time to go to the airport. Otherwise, we'll be stuck on the traffic on the Howard Franklin Bridge. And so part of this is building the market between downtown and Gateway. Another part is building the market from downtown St. Pete to downtown Tampa. And a third part is building that airport market. So there are a lot of moving parts, and there are a lot of pieces that trying to outline as clearly as possible about what we can do, what the potential funding sources would be, and then how we need your help as the board to have the conversation with FDOT about putting in the capital improvements. So the first piece that I think that they would be willing to do, and it's a relatively low cost option is to widen and harden the shoulders between downtown St. Petersburg and Gandy. So there are sections where the shoulder's narrow. They would have to move the rumble strips so that the bus isn't running over it, and then also harden the shoulder so that we're not destroying pieces of the shoulder or running in the grass. They would also need to improve or add more road rangers on that section of roadway to clear accidents faster. And they've actually been working with, our local district has been working with central office on with central office on a statewide policy for bus on shoulders. As
Sorry.
part of that project, we are the pilot we are the pilot area and the case study that they are using for a statewide policy. So we've been working with them for a couple years now on how could they not only build this section of hardened shoulders, but then how do they test it and then set the precedent for doing it in other parts of the state.
Excellent.
What about not only 22nd, 38th, 54th, but the other exits farther up the line? How do they avoid getting sideswiped from a car turning off on the exit there?
So one of the things that is feasible in this plan is for them to put ramp metering on all of the entrances so that when we're operating in the shoulder and we go, it stops the traffic coming on, and so the bus comes through. So we actually have a video of it that I think we'd like to show the committee.
On the northbound side where people are coming off, so they're in the right lane and they're wanting to exit.
Right.
Okay, the metering works fine. I've experienced that in Pennsylvania and other places, but I'm trying to think about the off exits.
Right, so that has a lot to do with driver education, with signage, and all of those pieces that we would need to put into place in order for that to work. I mean, but you're right, that a driver in the right lane who's looking to exit is going to be aware that there could be
A bus
a
coming.
bus to their right.
Right.
And I think it's going to take some driver training as well. The cost of this, we're still working up final estimates, but for the 5-mile section, the initial pieces could be just a few $1 million. With the ramp metering, it could be $5 to $7 million for the 5 miles. Again, we're working with the consultant to examine how much that would cost. But it could be done fairly quickly. The DOT, we'll have to talk about the other projects and work that the DOT is doing in the corridor that they may or about their timing and what they would like to do and how quickly they could get this up and running. However, the funding for this would be what the DOT considers an operational improvement. And so it's a completely different pot of money that we don't normally have access to.
Isn't that great? Yes.
So would we, Cassandra, would we still continue to service stops at the Gateway Mall and Certegy and Britain Plaza?
So with the extension from the Gateway Mall, our initial service would just serve downtown St. Petersburg. There is a park and ride owned by the DOT, property owned by the DOT that is used as a park and ride on 26th Avenue North.
22nd.
Sorry, what did I say?
26th.
26th, yes, is it 22nd? Yes, 22nd Avenue North. And we are working with the city. There's some issues with the turns, with the buses coming off the roadway and then being able to turn into that property. And so we're working with city staff on some changes to the turning radius, geometry of the intersection. I know,
And
that's when it
then,
gets.
in addition, hopefully, you also explain the airport service, the status of the various and sundry airport plans we've got.
Yeah, so we have, in June, we're planning to add a stop to our 300X, which comes from our Almerton Road Park and Ride, and stop at the airport as early as June of this year.
Are we talking about Tampa International or
Yes.
St. Pete Clearwater?
Tampa International. So right now, that 300X goes from the Park and Ride we have on the west end of Almerton and goes to downtown Tampa, but doesn't stop at Tampa International Airport. And we have people who want to get jobs at Tampa International Airport.
Right.
In order to do that, they have to go all the way into downtown Tampa and then take a HART bus back out, so they have to double back. And so we would try to eliminate that. That's only 13 trips a day. And so even though it's a small start, it is a start to get to the airport. The second piece would be the 100X, which sort of went through those sort of multi-phase incremental approach to getting that up and operational. And then the third one would be the Clearwater Beach, the TIA Express, which is going to take a little more work with some folks out in Clearwater to figure out where that ultimately goes.
Is that
did I miss
important to
anything?
them, to Clearwater?
They are currently not necessarily on board with it.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
Clearwater Beach. Clearwater Beach.
Yeah, I'm surprised, because that would seem to me to be incredibly important.
I think it's just how far does it go? So we have a central landing point with our new Clearwater Beach
Right,
Transit Center, and then it could form as a distribution point to get to what people's ultimate destination is on the
Right,
beach.
the hotel could pick them up there with their vans.
And so I think what we're going to have to do with that is walk through different operating scenarios about what is the end of the line stop, and walk them through the cost estimates and talk to folks out on the beach and see if is it worth it. The problem is that when we go much farther than the Clearwater Beach Transit Center, we really get bogged down in the traffic on the beach, and then we're unable to be as efficient with the express service. So you're taking a very large, potentially large bus down the beach, trying to get people, as opposed to having them get to the transit center and then.
So the transit center is located right around where the roundabout is?
Yes,
Yes.
just east of the
Yeah.
roundabout.
It's probably where you got off when you took the trolley.
Yeah,
No, because it took us all the way down to, because we stopped at Frenchie's. She let us off right
Oh,
in
really?
front of it, and all the way down there.
Hmm.
And when we came back, it was coming from South Beach up.
So you took the one that
So you took the
went
South
north.
Beach trolley that goes through the roundabout and then goes down to Sand Key and then comes.
I don't know, it just said Clearwater Beach on it. We got on it, we didn't
Hmm.
know.
That's what it is. After it dropped you off, they went down to Sand Key.
And then came back around. Must have done it a couple times, because we were in that restaurant a while.
The
So,
reason, the reason I wanted Cassandra to kind of give the executive committee a little update on this is just a little bit of concern of mine is that, you know, PSTA has this ability, and it's great that we're working so well with FDOT to incrementally make these improvements. They're not going to be as robust and successful and gold standard as the premium transit plans that the region is focused on right now and the Tampa Bay Times is talking about. They're going to be what we can do with the resources we have. I mean, as she says, the first one's not going to go to the airport. It's going to go across the Gandy Bridge and service downtown Tampa from St. Petersburg. And then we're going to have this very limited service to the airport start in June. But it's going to sit in traffic because there's no dedicated lanes across the bridge, right? We're going to do what we can, but I just know that, you know, some folks are going to say, well, see, you can do it. Why do we need Vision and our friends in Hillsborough questioning why we need this premium transit plan. But that is the way to have what we're all expecting in the future. We'll do what we can incrementally, but
there's a
just want to be
huge,
conscious of how we message this.
there's a huge challenge in looking at what an ultimate vision is and then doing nothing until you have all of the pieces perfectly in place. And that's what we've been doing, is just waiting for FDOT or waiting for something else or waiting for somebody to give us a lot of money to do something. And so if we do a little bit and do a little bit and do a little bit, we'll eventually get there. Or maybe somebody says, we really need to put that in motion now. We've been asking for bus on shoulders from FDOT for a while, and their response is, well, where's your route that operates there? So now we're gonna put the route, even though it's a very limited amount of service, once we put it on there, we can give them the impetus. See, there's actually a route there. We really need to put this on there, and then it becomes one piece
Then
not a set of dominoes.
What do we do to ensure that it's successful? Because
Yeah.
that's, and how do people find out about it?
Well, we just talked about that this morning, actually. So we did budget some in Cindy's budget this year to promote regional services. And so I think we would put some effort, we would have to put some effort towards promoting the service that we're putting out there.
Yeah.
And I think have a commitment to expanding the service as quickly as possible. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge for us. We know that it would almost be impossible for FDOT to deny a service development grant for this project. This is exactly what they want. This is exactly what they should be giving money for at central office. And I think that we could be 2 for 2 on our getting exactly what we've asked for from service development grants if we put this in as a proposal. The challenge is, where does the other half come from? It's huge. It's a huge challenge.
How much is it?
It would be about $1 million a
You-
That's
year.
it?
So
Well,
that
yes,
we would have to put
we would have to
in
put in
this?
$1 million a year.
Is that the half that we have, or the
That-
half that we still need to have?
Both. So it's like a $2 million service.
Okay,
Like a 2.5, I mean, I'll get you the exact numbers, but it's like a $2.5 million service to run, 5:30 to midnight, 30-minute service, which is what we should be on all of our regional routes.
and speaking about routes, I don't know if you know that the county last Saturday opened the new community center in Lealman at the Windsor School. And there was a lot of conversation about what could we do to improve transportation around the Windsor School? And we lovingly were referring to, oh, just wait, there'll be a Lealman connector. So I just wanted to put that thought in your head to see what we could do about getting those people some opportunity to move about a little easier, because they don't even have a grocery store. It's a food desert.
Mhm.
The county staff reached out to us last week about a project that they're doing called Linking Lealman.
But
And we'll be out there with.
Lealman, Linker, or whatever.
Mhm.
Linking Lealman.
Hmm.
So we have staff that'll be going out to that.
I like Lealman Connector better. If they say so.
That's what they're calling their project.
Okay,
not the
well,
service.
ask them, where's the money, because they can get the money from somewhere. Potentially. Okay, great conversation. Thank
I have
you,
a question.
Cassandra. Counselor
Yeah.
Barkley.
Getting back to the routes that we're talking about over the bridge. If we do this in a half-hearted way, aren't we running the risk that the loyal opposition is going to say, you don't have any traffic, you don't have any riders, why are you doing this? And we're never going to get anywhere. That's my big concern with doing this in a partial manner, is we're not going to develop the rider base and the the robustness that we need so we can justify it. I mean, the thing we constantly run in is these guys that want to shut down PSTA entirely because we don't have any riders, and it's every meeting, the same conversation for these folks. We need to develop robust service that people will use, and if we're doing it on a half-hearted way, we're not going to be developing that substantial, robust ridership that we need to be successful.
It's almost like you've been in my office for the last 3 years, because I've been saying exactly the same thing. We go halfway and then we wonder why things fail.
Yeah.
And yet, doing nothing
No, I know.
can't be an
I agree with
option
you.
either.
And
And so
I'm
this
with
is,
you.
this is the discussion
And
that
I'm
we
with
have
you
internally
with
about.
doing it incrementally if that's our only choice. My problem is that we're not, we're never going to get to where we're a competitive region if we don't have robust ridership. And you got to have a strong schedule and a clear, delineated, substantial route system to do that. And so we're sort of in a catch-22 situation.
Agreed.
Right. That's what I wanted
So,
to have the PSTA board support before we move forward with this.
so, let's pretend for a minute you had that second $1 million. What does it look like then?
Without any other capital investment from FDOT, it looks like we would need 2 more buses, which I've actually put in the cost estimates for their capital. And 5 a.m. to midnight, 30-minute service in the
It
short
looks like an
term.
okay option, but
Yeah.
it sits in the traffic.
Yes,
It
Yeah.
sits in the traffic
Mhm.
until
until we
the
can get.
premium transit
yeah.
plan is implemented with the DOT road money invested. Yeah.
So this is what I would like to recommend to you, Brad. And we don't have a quorum anymore, so do we have to, we can't really do it.
This is an informational item.
Yeah.
Okay, so under informational item, I would like to suggest that you schedule a meeting with Commissioner Welch, who is the chair of the TDC. And that you also meet with David Downing and Tim Ramsberger
Yep.
and talk to them about a plan. You could take Cassandra, because she, be visionary about what you think you could do to relieve traffic and to help tourists move around the community. And then figure out how much you could get away with asking them for money.
Yeah.
Because they can take recommendations, or applications, I should say, or, I just think, the TDC bill that Brandis filed, and there was a companion in the House, both of those moved through session pretty well, which was an indication to me that this was really gonna get some traction.
Did it make?
But no, because it didn't get out of its last committee in the Senate.
Okay.
My understanding is the folks with the visit, the TDC in Tampa, Hillsborough,
Yeah.
folks came out really loudly against opening up that statute because they didn't want Hillsborough to be able to take any money from the TDC for the raise.
Mm. Mm.
Oh.
So that kind of kills their opportunity for creative funding for the raise. We already had our 6 cent that we've been holding for them.
Yeah.
But without TDC money, I don't know how they get enough money to keep the raise over there. So that's
Mhm.
another conversation that's
Mhm.
probably gonna come back over on this side.
Gotcha.
But there's certainly an argument that you can make that shows synergy between the millions of visitors that are coming here
Yeah.
into our county every year
Mhm.
and the untenable burden that it places on our infrastructure.
Mhm.
Yeah, as you saw on Clearwater Beach, I mean,
Good.
yeah.
We've got to get those cars off.
And you know what, Brad, Cassandra, the project that you're studying, for some reason, I thought it was kind of a done deal. The autonomous vehicle project from downtown Clearwater to Clearwater Beach, that's just a study. Well, where are we in that study?
We're still working out the scope with the consultant.
Seriously?
We talked to a consultant when they were in town about making it like the St. Petersburg one that would include a pilot, a running of an actual vehicle in a pilot phase for some period of time. However, quite candidly, they, in a review of northern Pinellas County options, given the current technology, the Clearwater, downtown Clearwater Beach option, which was very highly prioritized by us and the consultant even, the vehicles that they currently have right now don't go very fast. And so we're, at least from what I heard, Sandra might have a further update, they were likely, for the pilot at least, they would do the study and come up with a plan for Clearwater and other locations, but the pilot would likely not be able to go over and back across the bridge during 2018. If we were able to secure the funding for a pilot in northern Pinellas County, like a pilot in 2018, at least with the current technology, it probably wouldn't be able to go over the bridge because the vehicle couldn't go fast enough. So they were looking from, the last I heard was they were looking at Dunedin as the low, the
northern
pilot.
'Cause
But
what- 'cause
with
what-
with a hope and a plan specifically to, there is one of the companies has come out with a autonomous bus, Volvo, I can't remember, has identified an autonomous, fast-moving vehicle. And maybe they're building it, I don't know. So the idea would be that PSTA might try to be the first to try to, once the technology is there.
Because, yeah, I mean, that's clearly, that could clearly be a tourist
Yeah.
nexus.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked to them about a number of options and what might be feasible now, and we thought about, well, what if you put the transit on the beach side? It would only be on beach, but in order to get people who are traveling up and down off onto something else, can you have a vehicle that runs on the sand, right? So you're, well, I mean, it's like, we're really trying to think creatively about, if you can't solve one problem, can you solve the other?
Yeah, well,
And so-
that beach is so wide,
Mhm.
I'm right next to that big wide sidewalk.
Mhm.
It'd be interesting if you could section, I don't know how wide the thing is, and just run it up and down.
Right, so that might be
Yeah.
another
We
option
looked at
that we're looking at in the context of that consultant's scope. So, I mean, we really are thinking outside the roadway.
I mean, that would be such a, people would write it just because it'd be fun and different and unique.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to our guy with the overhead deal?
Oh, he's still around,
Okay,
believe you me.
okay.
He
all right.
came and spoke at the T-Barta meeting.
Mhm,
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah, he's still around. Doreen is still loud and clear on that.
mhm. Okay, sorry I brought it up.
No,
Okay.
we're all good. All right, well, good meeting, everybody. I guess we're just sitting here
Now,
chatting.
just as an FYI for you, Commissioner, and Darden too, the PSA board meeting is on March 21st, which is the Wednesday immediately following the day before we'll be returning from Washington, D.C. I guess he'll be returning in the morning,
Tuesday.
because you have a county meeting,
In the
and then
afternoon.
Darden, Sandra, and I, and others, at least with our Bowman, as far as board members go, will be coming back Tuesday evening. And we'll see
I'm
what
always
bright and
the
early on
last-
Wednesday morning.
I'm always the first one to leave while you guys stay around.
I know, I know. Well, you're welcome to stay.
Now, when do you
I'll go visit me
leave?
again.
Do you
I'll
leave,
change the lights.
are you leaving Friday night or Saturday morning?
I'm leaving on a airplane early Saturday.
Early Saturday?
I'm
And
leaving
we're on
early
the-
Sunday.
Yeah, you are. Oh, okay. I thought you were on the noon flight.
No, because I have this big gala Friday night that I have a table at, so I can't come.
Oh, leaving Saturday?
Saturday morning.
No,
I
Sunday
can't
morning.
stay out
She's
late.
leaving Sunday morning to Tuesday morning.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, okay. Too busy. You're just too busy.
I am busy. Yep, very busy. Busy little bee.
Okay.
We didn't even say goodbye to Bill. I didn't even realize he left.
You left very quietly. I waved at him.
It's like March. In like a lion, out like a lamb.
I like cake and stuff. I've never ordered cake and stuff.
I think we are adjourned.
Okay, all right.
You probably need to do that.
Good,
after
good,
that.
good meeting, unfortunately,
Cut my budget.
Brad, are you gonna call? I feel terrible about Patty.
This is not a sunshine thing, I don't think, right?
pardon me?
Patty's thing is not a sunshine issue.
No.
I mean, you have no control over it.
I think it
What
was,
are you talking about?
She just texted me and said,
he wanted, first to have